She set her bag down in the dust and said, "If you expect me to stay quiet, you chose the wrong woman. So why did the man everyone avoided hesitate before answering?" The wind pushed hard against the station as the stagecoach door swung open, its hinges groaning like something worn thin from waiting. Luke Mercer stood off to the side, hat low, watching without stepping forward. A few townsfolk lingered nearby, pretending not to stare. The woman who stepped down didn't look around for help. She steadied herself, then faced the street like she'd already made a decision no one else understood. When Luke finally moved toward her, the murmur behind him grew sharper. He reached for her bag. She didn't let go right away. For a second, neither of them did. What kind of woman comes this far and refuses to be carried the rest of the way? "Stay with me." Would you have stepped forward or turned back? The wind came down off the iron ridge like it had somewhere to be. It dragged dust across the main street, rattled the loose sign above Pike's General Store, and pressed against every door in town as if testing which one might give. Folks didn't move much that afternoon. They leaned where they already were, on hitching posts, on railings, in doorways, waiting. Not for the stage, for him. Luke Mercer stood at the far end of the platform, one hand resting on the worn leather of his reins. His horse shifted under him, picking up on the wind. Luke didn't. He stood like he always did, still, broad-shouldered, hat low enough to shade his eyes. A man built for hard ground and long days, the kind people watched before they spoke. No one greeted him. They never did. A boy ran past, then slowed when he saw Luke, glancing up quick before his mother called him back. Two men near the saloon stopped talking altogether. Even Harold Pike, standing in his doorway, had gone quiet, thumb hooked in his vest pocket, eyes fixed down the track. The stage whistle came thin through the wind. Luke didn't shift his weight, but his fingers tightened once on the reins. The letter he'd sent weeks ago sat folded in his coat pocket. Short, plain. He had read it enough times to know every word by heart. Needed a wife. Hard land. No promises beyond a roof and work. He hadn't expected much in return. The stage rolled in with a long creak, wheels grinding over stone. Dust lifted around it, then settled slow as it came to a stop. The driver climbed down, boots hitting the ground with a dull thud. The door opened. A gloved hand appeared first, steady on the frame. Then she stepped down. Luke's gaze held without meaning to. She didn't rush, didn't hesitate either. Her boots found the step, then the ground, like she'd already measured the distance. Her dress was simple, travel-worn, but clean where it mattered. Her posture stayed straight, even with the wind pressing against her. Evelyn Carter. He knew it before she spoke. Not from the letter, from the way she looked at the place. Not at the people, not at him. At the land. Her eyes moved past the buildings, past the road, settling somewhere beyond, where the hills broke and the dry fields stretched thin, like she was already asking what could be made of it. Luke stepped forward, boots heavy against the boards. "Miss Carter." Her gaze came back to him, direct. No flinch, no pause. "Mr. Mercer." Her voice was even, not soft, not hard, just there. Up close, he noticed the dust at the hem of her dress, the faint crease in her gloves from holding tight too long. Travel had taken something out of her, but not what he expected. He reached out his hand. She took it. Her grip held firm, not testing him, not yielding either. Just meeting him where he stood. Something in his chest shifted, small and quick, before he let go. "That all you've got?" he asked, nodding toward the single trunk the driver set down behind her. She glanced at it once. Everything that matters. No apology in it, no explanation. Behind him, a low murmur passed through the onlookers, then faded just as fast when Luke turned slightly. He picked up the trunk. It was lighter than he expected. She didn't offer to help. Didn't step back either. Just waited until he moved, then followed. The wagon stood tied near the end of the platform. Luke set the trunk in the back and turned, offering his hand out of habit more than thought. For a moment, she looked at it. Then she stepped up on her own. He lowered his hand without comment and climbed in after her. The horse pulled forward, hooves striking the road in a steady rhythm. No one called out as they left. No one waved. The town let them go the way it always did, with eyes, not words. They rode in silence. Wind moved across the open stretch beyond the last building, carrying the smell of dry grass and old wood. The road narrowed, bending toward the ridge. Fences leaned where they'd been left too long. Posts tilted, wire slack in places. Evelyn watched it all. Not like a visitor, like someone counting. Luke kept his eyes ahead, but he noticed the way her gaze followed the line of the fence, the way she marked the low ground where water might gather, the way she didn't once look back at the town. "You've worked land before," he said after a while. She didn't answer right away. "Some," she said finally. That was all. They rode another stretch before she spoke again. "I didn't come to be kept." The words landed between them, plain as the road. Luke's jaw shifted once. "Didn't ask for that." "I know," she said. He glanced at her then, just once. She wasn't looking at him. She was watching a broken gate hanging off one hinge as they passed. "I came to build something," she went on. "Same as you." No challenge in it. No plea either. Just a line set in the ground. Luke turned his eyes back to the road. The wind eased for a moment, then picked up again. Ahead, the ridge rose slow and steady, and somewhere beyond it sat the house he hadn't managed to fix in 3 years. He had asked for someone ordinary. He had asked for someone who would stay quiet and work. The woman sitting beside him did neither, and for the first time since the letter had gone out, Luke Mercer felt something he hadn't planned for. Not doubt. Something closer to being seen. He tightened the reins slightly as the wagon climbed. Behind them, the town disappeared into dust. Ahead, the land stretched open. Neither of them spoke again, but the silence had changed. By the time the wagon crested the last rise, the light had gone softer, turning the dry hills a dull gold. Luke slowed the horse without thinking. The place came into view the way it always did. Gradual, then all at once. A sagging fence line, a barn that leaned just enough to notice. The house set back from it, square and still, like it had been waiting. Evelyn didn't say anything. She stepped down from the wagon before he came around, boots hitting the dirt firm and steady. Luke paused with one hand on the rail, then moved to lift her trunk. It felt heavier now, though he knew it wasn't. She stood facing the house, not judging it, not softening it either, just taking it in. The porch creaked under Luke's weight as he climbed the steps. He pushed the door open. It gave with a long, dry groan, like it hadn't been asked to do that in a while. Inside, the air held still. Dust caught the last of the daylight coming through the window. The table sat where it always had. One chair pulled out slightly, angled like someone had stood up and never come back to set it right. Evelyn stepped in behind him. Her boots made a quieter sound on the floorboards than his. She didn't move far at first, just stood near the doorway, letting her eyes travel. A coat hung on a peg by the wall, not new, not thrown there either. Placed, left. She walked to it, not touching right away, just looking. Luke set the trunk down harder than he meant to. The sound cut through the room. He cleared his throat. Been meaning to clear some of this out. The words sounded thin once they were out. Evelyn glanced back, then returned her gaze to the coat. Her fingers brushed the sleeve once. Light, like checking if something was still there. Then she let it be. She moved on. The table, the shelf above the stove, a chipped mug with a hairline crack running down one side. She turned it slightly, then set it back where it had been. No questions. That settled something in Luke's chest he hadn't expected. The room's this way, he said, nodding toward the hall. He didn't wait to see if she followed, just walked, boots steady, though he felt the weight of her behind him. The bedroom door opened easy. He stepped aside. You take this one. She looked past him into the room. The bed was made, but not with care. More like it had been kept that way out of habit. A small window let in the last light. The curtain hung uneven on one side. And you? She asked. Luke rubbed a hand over the back of his neck. I'll be out on the porch. She held his gaze a moment longer than needed. That's not necessary. It is. He didn't raise his voice, didn't explain. Just stepped back. She didn't argue again. Instead, she set her hand on the bedpost, testing it slightly, like she had with the gate earlier. Then she nodded once, more to herself than to him. I'll make it work. Luke turned before he could say anything else. Outside, the air had cooled. The wind had settled into something steadier, less sharp. He leaned against the porch rail, looking out at the fence line that ran crooked along the far edge of the field. Behind him, he heard movement. Not loud, not hurried. A drawer opening. The soft scrape of something being shifted. Then quiet again. He stayed where he was. After a while, the smell reached him. Beans. Cornmeal. Something cooking low and slow on the stove. He hadn't lit that stove since morning. Luke straightened, turning back toward the door. He stepped inside, slower this time. Evelyn stood at the counter, sleeves rolled just enough to keep them clear. She wasn't searching for things anymore. She had found them. A pot simmered. A cloth lay folded near her hand. She moved with a kind of economy, like she wasn't wasting motion on anything that didn't need it. He watched from the doorway. You found everything all right? She didn't turn. Most of it. He stepped in further, boots quieter now. There's more out back. Storage shed. I'll look tomorrow. She lifted the lid on the pot, letting steam roll up, then set it back down. Luke nodded, though she couldn't see it. They ate at the table without ceremony. 2 bowls, 2 spoons. The chair stayed angled the same way. He noticed she didn't move it, didn't fix it, just sat across from him like it belonged that way. The food was simple, better than he remembered simple being. Halfway through, she set her spoon down. That fence on the north side, she said. Posts are leaning. Luke looked up. Ground's soft there. Not soft, she said. Dry. No hold. He waited. Water runs off too fast, she went on. You'd need to cut a shallow line from the creek. Slow it down. He let the words settle. You done that before? She picked up her spoon again. I've seen it done. That was all. He nodded once. After supper, she cleared the bowls without asking. He reached for one, then stopped, his hand hovering a moment before he pulled it back. She didn't comment. Later, when the light had gone, Luke stepped back out onto the porch. He laid his blanket down on the boards, same as he had the last few nights, same as he'd planned. But the house behind him didn't feel the same. Inside, a chair sat angled. A coat still hung where it had. But something had shifted. Not removed. Not replaced. Just Acknowledged. Across the yard, a lantern flickered to life inside the window. Evelyn moved past it once, her shadow crossing the wall. Luke lay back, staring up at the dark stretch of sky. The wind moved softer now. From the road below, far enough to be carried thin, came a voice he recognized. Harold Pike. People don't stay long with him. Luke closed his eyes. He didn't move, but for the first time in a long while he wondered if that might not be entirely up to him anymore. Morning came thin and pale, the kind of light that didn't quite settle, just stretched across the ground like it wasn't sure it belonged there. Luke was already up, working the fence line with a hammer that had seen better years. Each strike landed solid, even when the post didn't hold the way it should. He heard the door before he saw her. Evelyn stepped out with a tin cup in her hand. Steam curled up into the cool air. She didn't call out, just stood there a moment, watching the land wake slow. Then she walked toward him. The grass crunched under her boots, dry even this early. When she reached him, she held out the cup without a word. Luke hesitated a fraction, then took it. "Thank you," he said. It came out rough, like he hadn't used the words in a while. She nodded once. "The ground's worse on this side," she said, looking past him at the fence. He followed her gaze. The posts leaned where the soil had given up trying to hold them. Always been that way. Doesn't have to stay that way. She crouched, pressing her fingers into the dirt. It crumbled easy. "Water runs off here," she said. "If you cut a shallow trench from the creek, slow it down, it'll hold." Luke watched her hand move through the soil. Careful. Sure. "You'll need a shovel that can bite through this," she added. "That one won't." She nodded toward the one leaning against the fence. The handle was worn smooth from use. He took a sip from the cup. Coffee. Strong enough to sit in his chest. "I've managed this far." She stood, brushing the dust from her palm. "Yes," she said. "You have." No judgment in it. Just a fact. He set the cup down on the post. They worked side by side after that. No plans spoken out loud. She lifted wire where it sagged, held it steady while he drove the nails in. Once her hand brushed his as she passed him a tool. Both of them paused a second too long, then went back to work like it hadn't happened. By midday, the sky had changed. The wind came first, not sharp like before, heavy, carrying something with it. Luke straightened, looking west. A line of dark clouds had begun to rise over the ridge. He didn't like the look of it. "We'll need to bring them in early," he said. Evelyn followed his gaze. "That's not passing quick." "No." They moved faster then. Luke saddled up, riding out toward the north pasture. The herd had already picked up on it, restless, shifting, heads turning toward the wind. He swung down, moving through them with practiced ease, guiding them back toward the barn. By the time he got them moving, the first crack of thunder rolled across the sky. When he reached the yard, he expected to find her inside. She wasn't. Evelyn stood near the broken stretch of fence, pulling a length of rope tight between two leaning posts. The wind pushed her dress against her legs, hair coming loose around her face, but her hands held steady. Luke swore under his breath and rode over. "You should be inside." She didn't look at him. "This won't hold if we leave it." Another gust hit, stronger this time. The rope snapped loose from her grip. It whipped back and she caught it again before it could tangle. Luke jumped down, boots hitting the dirt hard. "Let me. I've got it." They both reached for the same line. Their hands met on the rope. For a moment, neither pulled away. The wind roared around them, lifting dust, bending the grass flat. Rain hadn't come yet, but it was close, close enough to feel in the air. "Hold it steady," he said. She nodded. He drove the post deeper, each strike of the hammer fighting against the ground and the wind. She leaned her weight into the rope, bracing it with both hands. Another crack of thunder. Closer now. The first drops hit, large and scattered, darkening the dirt where they fell. Evelyn shifted her footing. A stone rolled under her boot. She slipped. It happened fast. Her balance went, the rope jerked, and she pitched forward. Luke dropped the hammer and caught her, one arm around her waist, pulling her back before she hit the ground. They froze like that. Rain came harder, drumming against the earth, against his shoulders, against her back where his hand held firm. Her breath caught once. His did too. For a second, the storm seemed to fall away, just the two of them, close enough to feel it. Then Luke let go. Not sudden, not rough, just enough to give her back her footing. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, though her hand stayed on the rope a moment longer than it needed to. "I'm fine." He stepped back, picking up the hammer again. "Finish it," she said. He did. The rain came down steady now, soaking through shirts, turning dust into mud under their boots. By the time the fence held, both of them were drenched. Neither mentioned going inside first. They walked back together, not touching, not speaking, but not apart either. Inside, the air felt warmer than it should. Evelyn sat on the edge of the chair, pulling her wet gloves off, one finger at a time. Mud streaked her hands. She reached for a cloth, wiping them slow. Luke set a canteen on the table near her. She glanced at it, then at him. "Thank you." He nodded. Didn't sit. Didn't leave either. She wrung out the cloth, then looked down at her hands again. "They didn't run," she said. "The cattle." "No," he replied. "They didn't." She gave a small nod. Outside, the storm kept moving across the land, rolling east. Inside, the house held something new, not quiet the way it had been, not empty either. Luke leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching the water drip from the brim of his hat onto the floor. Evelyn didn't look up again, but she didn't move away. And for the first time since she arrived, neither of them felt like they were standing alone in the same room. The storm passed sometime in the night. By morning, the ground held the rain in shallow pools, dark patches spreading across the yard, where dust had been the day before. The fence stood where they had set it, rope tight, posts holding just enough. Luke was already outside when the sun came up. He checked the line again, pressing one post with his boot, then another. It wasn't perfect, but it would last. Behind him, the door opened. Evelyn stepped out, slower this time. The air had cooled overnight. She held her shawl close, eyes moving over the land the way she always did. She paused when she reached the fence, ran her hand along the rope once. "It held," she said. Luke nodded. "For now." She looked at him then, just long enough to measure the words, then gave a small nod back. They worked through the morning without much talk. He mended what had come loose. She cleared debris the storm had pushed against the barn wall. Once he noticed her pause near the gate, studying the hinge the way she had on her first day. Before she could reach for it, he stepped in, tightening the bolt with a wrench. When he finished, he stepped back. She tested it. It held. She didn't say anything, just moved on. Near midday, a sound carried up from the road. Not wind, not cattle. Hooves. Slow, steady. Not from someone passing through. Luke straightened, wiping his hands on his shirt. Evelyn turned at the same time. The rider came into view along the bend below the ridge. Dark coat, straight posture. The horse moved like it had been trained for more than dirt roads. Not local. Luke felt it before the man even reached the yard. The rider slowed near the gate, taking in the land, the fence, the house. His eyes moved last to Evelyn, then to Luke. He tipped his hat once, not out of respect, out of habit. "Mr. Mercer?" Luke didn't answer right away. "Can I help you?" The man dismounted without asking. His boots landed clean, like he was used to stepping into places that weren't his. "My name is Victor Langford," he said. "I've come a long way to speak with Miss Carter." The wind shifted slightly. Evelyn didn't move closer, didn't step back either. "What about?" she asked. Victor reached into his coat, pulling out a folded document. The paper was clean, too clean for this place. "Matters that concern you directly." Luke's jaw tightened. "You can say it here." Victor glanced at him, then back to Evelyn. "I imagine you'd prefer I didn't." She held his gaze. "Say it." A pause. Then he unfolded the paper. "Your family held a debt," he said. "One that was transferred under agreement before you left. The terms weren't met." The words settled heavy even before they made sense. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the edge of her shawl. Victor continued. "The agreement requires your return, or compensation will be taken in other forms." Luke stepped forward, just enough to shift the ground between them. "What forms?" Victor's eyes flicked toward him. "Property tied to the agreement," he said. "Assets, land, if necessary." Luke let out a breath through his nose. "This land's mine." Victor gave a thin smile. "Then I suggest Miss Carter considers her position carefully." Silence stretched, the kind that presses. Evelyn didn't look at Luke. Not yet. "When?" she asked. Victor folded the paper again. "Soon." He stepped back toward his horse. "I'll be in town 2 days. I expect an answer." He mounted without hurry, turning the horse with a small pull of the reins. "Miss Carter." Then he rode off the way he came. The sound of hooves faded slower than it should have. Luke didn't move. Neither did she. The wind picked up again, carrying the smell of wet earth. Finally, Evelyn let out a breath she hadn't meant to hold. Luke looked at her. "You knew about this?" She shook her head once. "Not like that." He waited. She didn't say more. That afternoon, the work stopped early. Evelyn sat on the porch steps as the light shifted across the ridge. The land looked different after rain. Softer, but not kinder. Luke came out with 2 cups, set one beside her. She picked it up, hands steady. They sat without speaking, not avoiding, just not filling the space. Night came slow. A lantern lit the inside of the house. Outside, the air cooled again. Evelyn stayed on the steps longer than she needed to. Luke leaned against the post behind her. After a while, she stood. "I'll pack in the morning," she said. The words came quiet, flat, like they'd already been decided. Luke didn't answer right away. He looked out over the land instead, at the fence they had fixed, at the ground she had said could hold water, at the place that hadn't changed until she stepped into it. "You don't owe me staying," he said. Her hand paused on the doorframe. He went on. "But you don't owe them your life either." The wind moved between them. Evelyn didn't turn. Not yet. Then slowly, she stepped back from the door, walked past him, down the steps. Her boots touched the ground with the same steady sound as the day she arrived. She crossed the yard, picked up her bag where it had been set earlier, held it a moment, then turned, walked back, set it down beside the door. Luke didn't move, didn't speak. But something in his chest shifted again, not sharp this time, steady. Evelyn brushed her hands together, like clearing dust that wasn't there. "I'll stay," she said. No explanation, no condition, just the words. And for the first time since the rider had come up that road, the weight in the air eased, just enough to breathe. 2 days passed quiet, not easy, not light, but steady. Luke worked the north fence again, reinforcing what the storm had loosened. He didn't ask if she meant what she said, didn't ask how long she planned to stay. He worked like a man who knew better than to press on something that had just begun to hold. Evelyn moved through the house and yard with the same calm rhythm. She mended a tear in one of his shirts without mentioning it, left it folded on the chair by the door. He found it that evening, ran his hand over the stitching, then put it on the next morning without a word. On the second day, she saddled the horse before he came out. Luke stopped on the porch, watching. "We're going into town," she said. Not a question. He stepped down slow, taking his hat from the nail. "You sure?" She tightened the strap, checking it once. "They expect an answer." He held her gaze. "So do I." They rode side by side down the ridge. The road was still damp in places, wheels from passing wagons cutting shallow lines into the mud. As they neared town, the sound carried ahead. Voices, a hammer striking metal at the blacksmith's, a door slamming somewhere near the saloon. When they came into view, the same eyes turned. But it was different this time. Not just him they watched. Both of them. Harold Pike stood in his doorway again, same as before, but he didn't look away when Luke met his eyes. Inside the main street, Victor Langford stood near the hitching post, speaking with a man in a dark vest. He turned when he heard the horses. He didn't smile this time. Evelyn dismounted first. Luke followed. They walked forward together. Victor reached into his coat, already pulling the folded document free. "I was beginning to think you'd chosen to avoid this," he said. Evelyn didn't take the paper. "I didn't come to avoid anything." A few people gathered near the edge of the street, not close enough to interfere, close enough to hear. Victor glanced around, measuring the space, then looked back at her. "Then you understand the terms?" "I understand what was written," she said, "and what wasn't." That gave him pause. He unfolded the paper anyway, holding it out just enough to show the seal. "Your father entered an agreement," he said. "That doesn't vanish because you've decided to walk away." Evelyn's eyes stayed on the page for a moment. Then she looked up. "I didn't sign it." Victor's jaw tightened. "That isn't how these matters work." "No," she said. "It's exactly how they work." The air shifted. Someone behind Luke cleared their throat. Another voice muttered something low, then went quiet. Evelyn stepped forward. "I wasn't asked," she said. "I wasn't there when it was written. I wasn't given a choice." Victor folded the paper slower this time. "You were given a future." She shook her head once. "I was given a debt." Silence fell over the street. Luke didn't move, didn't step in. He stood where he was, close enough that his shoulder nearly touched hers, but not speaking for her. Victor looked at him then. "You understand what this could cost you," he said. Luke met his gaze. "I do." "And you're willing to risk your land on a disagreement over ink?" Luke's voice came low. "I'm standing where she stands." That was all, no louder than needed. But it carried. Harold Pike shifted in his doorway, then stepped forward a few paces. "That's not how we settle things here," he said, not looking at Victor, but not avoiding him either. Not without hearing both sides proper. A few others nodded. Victor's expression cooled. "This isn't your concern." Harold shrugged. "It is when it walks into our street." Evelyn didn't look back. She kept her eyes on Victor. "I'm not going back," she said. No tremor in it. No apology. He studied her for a long moment. Then he folded the paper again, slower this time, and slipped it back into his coat. "This isn't finished," he said. Evelyn didn't answer. Victor turned, mounted his horse, and rode off without another word. The street stayed quiet a moment longer. Then voices started up again. Not loud, not scattered, different. Luke let out a breath he hadn't noticed he was holding. Evelyn stepped back from where she'd been standing. For the first time since they'd arrived, she looked at him. Not to check, not to ask, just to see. "You still need someone to help you keep that place standing?" she said. The corner of his mouth shifted. Not quite a smile. "Only if she plans to stay." She held his gaze a second longer. Then she turned, walked back to the horse. Luke followed. They rode out of town without hurry. No one stopped them. No one called after them. Back on the ridge, the wind had softened again. The ground held the rain where it needed to. The fence stood straighter than it had before. When they reached the house, Evelyn stepped down and didn't head inside. She walked to the fence line instead. Luke joined her. They stood there a moment, looking out over the land. Then, without a word, she reached for the wire. He picked up the hammer, and they went back to work. Side by side, like it had always been that way. The wind moved softer across Iron Ridge that evening. Not gone, just quieter. The kind that carried through the fence lines and across the porch without asking anything in return. Luke worked the last nail into place and leaned back, resting his weight against the post. The sun had started its slow fall behind the hills, laying long shadows across the land that had once felt too empty to keep. Evelyn stood a few steps away, one hand resting on the wire they had just set. She didn't check it again. She already knew it would hold. For a long time, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. What they had built wasn't something that came from promises or words said too soon. It came from the way she stayed when leaving would have been easier. From the way he made space without asking her to become less. From the quiet choice, made more than once, to stand in the same place when the wind picked up. Out here, a person could lose a lot. Land, time, people. But sometimes, if they were steady enough, they found something that didn't need to be chased, just chosen. And maybe that's the part that stays with you. Not the storm, not the fear of what might be taken, but the moment someone decides they're not going anywhere. If you had been in her place, would you have stayed? And if you've ever stood where Luke did, learning to let someone stay without holding them too tight, then you already know how rare that kind of quiet trust can be. There are more stories like this waiting just beyond the ridge. Stories about second chances, about the weight people carry, and the unexpected ways they find their way home. You're always welcome to ride along.